so instrument panel. Just put the instrument panel together, and you may recognize this dash instrument panel is not correct for this 1959 2A. This is actually an instrument panel out of a NADA North American dealer area, I think it's called, 6-cylinder. And what's nice about these is that they have the small ignition key hole, so I can put a standard Motor Series 3 ignition switch in here, which has the start position on it, and it has two switch positions up here. I use all the holes for switches, giving me what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 switches, which is really, really handy, plus the start. Now again, you know, I absolutely love a stock Series 2A with the ignition and the push button start, and you know, the sort of look and feel of a traditional truck, but I'm already messing this truck up enough. I want to be able to get lots of switches on the dash panel. I'll probably have an auxiliary switch panel as well, but I hate the look of those things, so I wanted to make sure I could get as many as I could on here as well. I also filled in the extra power port accessory plug here and just drilled it out for a switch, so it doesn't have that pair of power plugs, which I've never been able to make any use of. You may not recognize these switches. These are from Holden's in the UK. Really, really like these switches. They're a really high quality toggle switch with a really long arm, rubber covered, really neat. They also have a rubber boot on them, so if I'm running around topless and the water gets in there, be in good shape. It's nice. It's also available a return to sender one, which will be my windshield washer. So I basically have headlights, riding lights, headlights, wipers, wiper washer, 2-speed heater, a heated windscreen, and a spare for now. Don't know quite what I'll do with that yet. Plus the standard Series 3 key. The advantage of that is I can use those multi-tumbler ones that I can put the same key in the door locks, which are Series 3 anti-burst style. So really, I'm very, very pleased with this. I absolutely love these switches, and they worked out quite nice. A neat trick about these, the way I mounted these switches, instead of using, well, I don't know if you can see, normally on a switch, to set the backspace, you have a nut on the shaft so that you could set how deep it sits in the panel, so by the time you put the front nut on, it's flush. Well, that's all very well, it works great. However, it gives you very little mechanical advantage for the switch, especially on a thin panel. And what I like to do is basically take two very large 1/2-inch washers and slide them on as spacers. What that does is gives me a nice shoulder sitting hard against the switch and hard against the inside of the instrument panel, and it gives me the correct spacing. One thing about that, much less flex on the panel, plus it deadens the switch quite a bit. So by the time you start to flick your switches, everything is a lot quieter than it would be with a really light panel switch. Anyway, I like that. The NADA instrument panel is also galvanized steel, which makes it a little more solid rather than aluminum on the regular ones. Anyway, I really like this panel. I think it'll be great. See ya! Okay, so I abandoned the remote oil filter. It was turning into an absolute nightmare of assorted fittings, and I wasn't even halfway there. I had a whole bunch more I was trying to figure out, because the lines had to come up, do a 180-degree turn down, then come straight up here, and then when they got to the top they'd have to do another 180 degrees to get on to the other part of the adapter. And frankly, well, I think I bought a cheap remote oil filter is what I did. But in the meantime, I'm going to toss you can see I put the regular filter back on there, and yes, it's pretty tight in there, no doubt. When the bulkhead support's in here as well, it'll be pretty much sealed in. Not quite, actually. You can get at it from below if you loosen the headers. Not the sort of thing you want to do every time you do an oil change, but I'm going to cope with it because I'm perfectly happy to just deal with that for now. But possibly a better remote oil filter that had some better fittings and just worked tidier might have solved that problem. But in the meantime, I'm quite content. All I have to do is loosen the bolts on the headers, slide it out just a little bit, and I can reach up and remove it quite easily. Anyway, that's the update on the oil filter. See ya. So on to the radiator. This is something I've given a lot of thought, and some of the thought wasn't all that clever. One of the problems, as you can see, because I'm trying to retain my nice Series 2A breakfast, I have a clearance problem with the headlight buckets and the radiator. And I can move the bottom of the radiator back a little bit before it hits the front of the water pump pulley, but that's a bit too tight. I'm not really comfortable with that. Plus, I need to keep the radiator as low as possible down on the front cross member, and if I want to move back any further, I'd have to cut off these tabs for the steering relays. Well, of course, I don't need the steering relays. It's an ambidextrous frame, and I could take those off no problem, but I just would rather not. Plus, having it sit here gave me an idea. I said, why does the radiator have to be vertical? I mean, really. So what I'm going to do is sit it at the bottom, basically between the two flanges for the old steering relays, and at the top I'll just set it back far enough that it clears the headlight buckets. This gives me another huge advantage, which I've been really stressing about, and that's this. This is my this is actually the correct breakfast for this truck. It's galvanized, but I didn't want to cut apart a galvanized one to build up this truck, so I cut up a new one and galvanized it. Anyway, the hood latch. I was in a situation where I wasn't going to be able to use the hood latch because the radiator would be so far forward, and I was going to have to go to military latches or something, which are not a bad solution, but I actually really like the standard Land Rover hood latch. So I only need 4.5 inches from the front of the radiator panel, the breakfast, to be able to get that hood latch back in, and well, by the time I tip the radiator back, I've got that easily. So now I just have to fabricate up a mount for this, which I pretty much got in mind. I'll keep you up to date. See ya. Okay, so I got the bottom cradle made for the radiator. If you can see down there, I took a nice piece of aluminum channel and actually tapped holes into the frame just off the holes of the relay here, and put two stainless steel countersunk screws down there to hold that in place. And up here on the radiator, I've taken some really nice neoprene tubing, slit it, and set it over the channel of the flange on the radiator, and that just makes a really nice snug fit right down in there. So let's see how that fits. If I can do this with one hand, swing the radiator around, drop these in here, let's see how that fits right in there. That drops right in there very nicely. Very good. So that's that. Piece of cake. Well, I'm really pleased. Made a quick little mock-up of the top panel. I got it slightly sloping up here. It's not 90 degrees to the front of the breakfast, and that's because on a stock Land Rover panel, you see there's a stamping here that raises the hood latch up a few degrees. So basically I made my panel flush with this surface here, not the original surface, which must have been about 9 degrees to the front breakfast. So that actually helped me a little bit, because I had to put a second fold in it here just to get up to where I want to let bracket fit across the top of the radiator. This is just a mock-up. It'll be full length when I'm done. Got to have that standard parcel shelf to put your beer on when you're working. Fortunately, it won't be horizontal anymore, but anyway, that'll work out pretty well. So I'm pleased with that. That's pretty good. See ya. Only really a small item, but for the rear flex brake hose on a Salisbury axle, the fitting comes straight up. I can't even remember. It's been so long since I have a non-Salisbury 109 rear end, but I seem to remember on a regular one they fit forward. But anyway, on the Salisbury they fit straight up, which is good because it gives you better total length for your flex line. But as a result, it tends to foul the check strap mount, which I don't use the check straps, but it gets kind of close. So what I do, I build a little bracket. This is out of 3/16 aluminum, to move the brake line out a bit so that it keeps it clear of this. It also moves it up and back, giving you a little more loop in the 17-inch long line, because the normal hole is basically down here. So this actually makes quite a bit of difference. A minor little item, but I feel a little more comfortable with it. See ya.